they will sell off the first to get their money up front, and then they will keep the second for longer term cash.
Right.
And so once they have their initial bulk amount of funds in pocket, that second note basically provides infinite return to them because they no longer have any cash in the deal. If basically the most creative genius in the real estate market finds time and makes effort to attend so much real estate education, where does that put the rest of us?
All right, we are here at Dealmaker, Orlando, Florida, 2025. I'm here with some good friends. I'm here with my good friend Joe and Goodwin Yee out of California. I wanted to take a quick second to kind of highlight what happens at these events and also to learn a little bit about Goodwin's exchange group that he has based out in Florida. We were briefly talking about it earlier, but we had to get back to the event. So I'm here with Joe. We're going to be asking some questions. So thank you for being with us. I know we met earlier last year at actually Tom Henderson's event. I don't know if you remember, but San Antonio. So yeah, I had just asked Joe, I said, hey, Joe, let's talk a little bit about exchanging. And Joe said, what do you mean, 1031 exchange? And I'm like, no, let's sit down. So that's, and Joe's been in the business or investing in since
probably 2012.
2012. So yeah, why don't you share with us, maybe a little bit about your background and kind of how long you've been in the real estate investing field. And then we'll transition over to kind of maybe learning a little bit about, the exchange group and what that is and how people can learn.
Okay. So I've been interested in real estate since the 80s, but I didn't actively do any real estate investment until later in the 90s and then moving forward into 2000s. So what I do now is mostly private lending and going backwards, note buying, short-term rentals, and then long-term rentals. So at this point, I'm pursuing other things like assisted living facilities and focusing on that for the next several years.
Awesome. So I know briefly we were talking during the breaks, and the one thing that I really like about this particular event is these events, the most powerful thing is the relationships. And as somebody, Barry Wise once said, there's always two seminars at these events, right? There's a seminar happening in the room and there's a seminar happening in the hallway. And sometimes the ones in the hallways are just as good, if not better, than the ones happening at the actual event. So I'd like to, talk about what you were having a conversation with somebody, kind of explaining, what an exchange group is and being able to think outside the box, because I know for a lot of real estate investors, there's a lot of folks that have been in the business for 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years, but they've only known how to do real estate a few ways, right? So everybody has different wants and needs at different times. And I know one thing that we were talking about is giving an example of somebody comes to you or any one of us and says, I have a rental property that I need to get a loan on, or I need to refinance, or I have a note that I like to sell. And I like for you to maybe share with the audience what are some of the things and questions that you guys ask to really help everybody else learn and figuring out a solution for that person that says, hey, I got a $60,000 note I'd like to sell. What does that look like?
Sure. Well, some of the questions that come up would be, how do I find deals? How do I find lenders? How do I get answers to questions answered? And I posed a question back to that person and said, how would you like to attend the forum that's done weekly, that is both in person and online, where you can find deals, where you can find money, where you can sell a note, or you can go ahead and borrow money based upon a note, and then put other things up for barter as well. So what we basically call stuff. And be able to do that on a regular basis for either free or inexpensively. So I'm a facilitator for the Southern California Exchangers Group, which is started by Rich Rice and Andy Teasley. So Andy is the host. I am one of the facilitators, co-host for that. And so we have a weekly session on Wednesdays from 2 to 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. It's both in person and online. And we basically have an electronic whiteboard with little sticky notes colored differently that each represent different groups. So the top would be property that you either own or control. The right side would be gray. That would be stuff. And stuff can literally be anything. It could be a service. So if you're a property manager, offer your services, your skill set, your knowledge for part of a deal. Uh, if you have a short-term rental, trade a week at your short-term rental for something that you like better. So things like that, they're perishable, right? If you have a short-term rental that sits empty, what good does it do you? Right? You could trade a week for something else that actually works out. Part of a note, part of a deal, a lead to something. And so go ahead and use that for other things. At the bottom, which is green, those sticky notes represent cash, which is either hard cash, uh, checking or savings account, or IRA money. And there's a difference why we make that distinction between the two, because IRA money can take longer to deploy. When you're looking for money, you look at the source of that money as well to determine how quickly that money can come to you to be able to apply to exactly what it is you need it for.
That's something really important because a lot of people don't think about that, right? It's like you may need to close next week on a deal. Well, an IRA sourcing fund may not be the best solution because sometimes it takes about a week or 2 weeks, right?
Exactly. And then to the left, the final group, those are yellow sticky notes. And the color doesn't really make any difference. We just color coded just so that way basically you can identify, because once you start getting offers and counter offers on the board, it helps to just know by the color what it really is without having to look at the detail within the box to identify.
You see green, you think cash, you see it's cash.
Exactly. So yellow represents paper. So paper is an industry term that represents notes. And the notes basically take two forms. One is an actual note that has already been written and is already active. A to be created note is basically, I want to borrow money. And so that could take the form of a note to be created. And that's why we use the acronym TBC, to be created, to represent money you want to go ahead and borrow. So you can put that note up there, to be created, identify the position, first or second. A lender might see that and look at the terms and say, okay, I will go ahead and meet your terms. We'll have a deal. And it could be just as easy as that. And literally, sometimes when we have our sessions, within seconds, we have our first deal up.
Wow. So let's put it into context. And Joe, you can chip in and ask any questions because I know this exchanging is probably fairly new to you as well. I don't know, maybe you have been a part of or you've been in conversations, but let's say somebody may go to you and say, hey, I'm getting ready to create a note on a property that I'm selling for, let's say, $200,000. I plan on creating, a note of, I don't know, $140,000 and maybe a small second, and maybe you're looking to sell the first, right? And then somebody comes to the group and say, hey, I'd like to sell the first. These are the terms. What does that look like?
So what you're describing is a seller finance note.
Right.
And so the seller basically agrees to do a note because that buyer may not qualify for institutional financing.
Correct.
And so the seller is fine to go ahead and have a note created. They will sell off the first to get their money up front, and then they will keep the second for longer term cash.
Right.
And so once they have their initial bulk amount of funds in pocket, that second note basically provides infinite return to them because they no longer have any cash in the deal. So that's a great way to go ahead and get a property sold. Find a wider group of potential buyers, and it could be faster too. You don't go through and pay all the other junk fees or renovation points. You basically all build it up directly within that seller finance note.
You know, what's some of the interesting and creative ways you guys have put deals together maybe recently, or something that you may be thinking that in the last few months, something that maybe stood out, or as you said, you maybe merged two different people that are have two different goals, right? Somebody's maybe looking to place capital, somebody's maybe looking to, sell a loan or refinance or anything, any creative things that you've seen recently that people, 95%, I would say, real estate investors wouldn't even think about doing these types of things.
Well, exactly what you just brought up as an example right now is a solution that oftentimes a potential buyer doesn't think of. So let's say you want to buy a property to go ahead and do as a fix and flip. Okay, and you're now talking to the homeowner and they want cash because they only know to get cash.
Right.
And so the typical thing is, well, you have two opposing forces trying to work with each other. Okay. And unfortunately, there's no medium in between that matches that. And so oftentimes an experienced investor like myself or anyone else will come in and speak with both parties and say, I understand you want cash at the time of sale. And I understand you want to go ahead and buy this and potentially put into your portfolio. So you want to be able to buy it on terms.
Right.
The two viewpoints are completely opposite of each other.
Right.
So how do we make this work? And what you just proposed earlier, what you mentioned earlier, is exactly how we would solution that. So, Mr. Seller, are you interested in having cash up front? And if so, how much cash?
Right.
Okay. So I would bring in a third party, a note buyer, to provide the cash. And because it's written as a note, you're going to get cash for this note. And buyer, you are going to get the financing that you're looking for. Okay, we just need to work out the terms of this note so that way we understand that these are the payments are going to be, what amount monthly, what rate is going to be acceptable. For the note buyer, what are you going to sell this note at that makes it attractive to me to go ahead and give you a lump sum of cash for X amount of monthly payments. So now we find a way to satisfy both parties.
Right.
Okay. And this is what experienced investors basically are able to go and bring to the table.
And the funny thing on that example is that we see this all the time. Most of the time, if you just don't have the resources or experience, you just say, hey, this seller said that he only wants cash. He wants $150,000 for the house. I don't have $150,000. This isn't a deal for me. I'm just going to walk away. But you're providing solutions and thinking outside the box.
Exactly.
The one thing that I really like about, these groups and some of the mentors that we've been talking about over the years that have 20, 30, 40 years of experience that are very creative is, being able to think outside the box and get a crazy amount when you look at it in terms of your return, right, on capital and what you're getting as far as a yield instead of getting, 8, 9, 10%. Being able to significantly just make a couple of tweaks and increase that yield to almost double. One of the examples that I really like that you shared earlier was the example of somebody comes to you because they need a little bit of cash and they think, well, I need to sell my note. I have a note and I have learned that I can sell notes, right? So they come to your group and they say, hey, I got a $60,000 note. I'm trying to sell it. And then you start figuring out, asking questions, and that leads you to finding out maybe they don't really want to sell the note, right? Can you go into that a little bit?
Sure. So with the Inland Empire Club that I volunteer at, we do a lot of mobile homes.
Okay.
So it's very typical for one of our investors to go out, buy a mobile home, fix it, and then sell it on seller finance. Therefore, they now have a note. So if you basically paid cash out of your reserves to go ahead and acquire the mobile home, and then do all the rehab yourself, what cash do you have to go ahead and do your next one?
Right.
Okay.
So we're going to run out of cash.
You're all going to run the cash sooner or later.
Right.
Okay. And so how do you recapitalize? Okay. You like the terms of the note because you want that steady income. Okay. But you need some cash to go ahead and get your next deal going. So they may think, oh, I have to sell this note at a big discount in order to get cash to go ahead and do my next deal. How does this make sense? Okay. And then we as moderators will say, okay, how much cash? And let's just use an example. The typical note we might see might be between $60,000 and $100,000. The dollar amount doesn't really matter, but the structure of the offer that it's going to come next does make a difference. So let's say it's $60,000 and they really only need about half of that. Okay. And so they're concerned that, oh, I'm going to get a really big haircut on this one. I might have to sell the note for $45,000. That means I just lost $15,000 on this note.
Right.
So why did I go through all this to lose $15,000 to now get my money back and then a little bit more to be able to do my next deal?
Right.
Somehow that doesn't seem to be a great business model. So we will say, tell you what, it sounds like you really need to keep that back part of the note and you need enough funds to go ahead and capitalize to go ahead and get your next one going. If I am able to go ahead and provide a solution like that, would that work out for you? And of course, the answer is yes. You're not losing any money on the note at all.
Correct.
So a typical offer would be, if we understand the needs of the money that's needed up front, how about I offer you $30,000 lump sum for the first half of your $60,000 note? Okay. So
the person's like, wow, I can actually keep my note and get what I need. I can get $30,000.
right.
I didn't never thought about that. So I'm going to keep the back end of the note and get $30,000 lump sum of money.
Right. And so the puzzled look that note seller gets is because when they put the note up for sale, thinking that they can only sell it as their only option, they're getting offers like $40,000, $45,000,
35,
50, even lower,
Right.
maybe even higher. It just depends on who's making the offer.
Right.
Okay. And so they're now hearing a different offer and they don't, it doesn't sound like I have to give you any discount at all. So let me make sure I understand this. You're going to give me $30,000 for the first half of the note, which is $30,000. Okay. And I keep the back half of the note, which is the other $30,000. There's no discount I'm hearing. I said, that's right. There's no discount. Okay. Does that work for the note seller?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, they're getting $30,000 of a $60,000 note, and they get to keep the back half of the note, which is also $30,000. So for the one making the offer, how does that make sense? Well, if you've taken any financial calculator courses, and in this particular example, we use a $60,000 note written at 9%. If you run this in a financial calculator, that return actually turns out to be about just slightly under double whatever that interest rate is. So if that interest rate is 9% and you're offering half for half, double the interest rate, which is 18, and it really turns out to be something like 17.94%. So for you loaning that money, we'll do this as a hypothecation. And I bring this up as an option because if you sell a partial of a note, that's a taxable event, which means that $30,000 that you think you're getting, that you do get, you're going to pay taxes on that. Okay, so you're going to get less than $30,000. If you do it as a hypothecation, which basically is using the note as a collateral, and you're going to go ahead and borrow against that note, that's not a taxable event. So you're going to get the full $30,000, you don't pay taxes on it, and you get the benefit of still keeping the back half of the note. Win-win scenario all around.
So many nuggets for a lot of people. If you guys really take the time to watch this video a few times, there's so many nuggets there. You have any questions, Joe, that you like to ask about the exchange group and, notes? Because
Not so much questions about the mechanics of what was just described, uh, more from the point of view of what Homero and I do and how it's applicable within the exchange framework. What Homero and I do is we borrow money from two types of people: short-term lenders and long-term lenders. The short-term lenders we use to purchase a property, do a fix and flip, and then by creating our own note or notes, sell that property to a good family, uh, typically a hardworking, self-employed family who banks don't really like. Banks really don't like it when your income is not nice and steady.
Exactly.
Okay. So we'll borrow from the short-term lender, and then we'll create the notes and sell those notes to long-term investors. We could use this exchange framework to find both types of lenders.
Yeah. So, yeah, instead of selling the note, we can just hypothecate, which we've done a few times. We can hypothecate the notes that we're originating and, obviously find a medium, something that works, but we don't have to sell the note, not a taxable event, and the short-term lender gets paid off, right? Just creating a lot of solutions.
Yep.
So, I like for you to, share, a few more details on how people can participate. And I think you were mentioning there's a couple of different groups throughout the country, and, something else, there's millions of dollars made in these groups, and the barrier to entry is incredibly low.
So there are multiple exchange groups throughout the nation. So I volunteer specifically for the one in the Inland Empire, which we call, again, SoCal Exchangers. That's with the O, not an E.com. But there's also a Florida exchange, there's a Ohio exchange, there's a Michigan exchange. And so each one has their own fee or free basis. Okay. And so one way to find out about all of these exchanges, and plus earlier I talked about knowledge of the financial calculator. It's crucial to learn how to use that app. And for all of $6, you can download the app onto your smartphone and have it available to analyze any deal, not just the parameters of, but to go ahead and provide a counter offer or to do what if scenarios. So if I don't do 12%, then will 13.5% work? Or instead of 360 months, what does it look like at 180 or 270 months? Play the what if scenarios to find the solution that works for the situation at hand. And one source that I can recommend is through Andy Teasley. And with Andy Teasley, you would send an email, Andy the Christmas Guy at yahoo.com, and put into the subject line newsletter. And you will get from Andy a weekly newsletter that has 3 financial calculator problems: easy, medium, and hard, plus the answers to the previous week's questions and the questions themselves. So that way, if you can't answer the this week's questions, you can look at last week's, look at the question, try and solve it, and the answer is provided to you. So that way you can figure out how to get to that point. Okay. Plus, there's also additional content that Andy provides in the newsletter, and that is the multiple exchanges that happen throughout the nation. But there's also more to that. What upcoming events are going to be worthwhile to go to? So, such as the paper course that Peter Fortunato will have annually in December, Bill Cook's What If and Pure Options classes, all those are provided in there as well. And if you want to meet Andy specifically, he identifies which events he'll be going to also. so that way you can meet up with him. And when Andy teaches his classes, that's also in there as well.
Awesome. So this exchange group, I think you were saying there's a monthly subscription to be a part of these groups, right?
Yeah, for the obscene amount of $29 a month, depending on the month. That gives you 4 sessions or 5 sessions, depending on how many Wednesdays there are in the month.
So you're gonna have to skip 5 Starbucks a month, okay?
So for you can do an individual session for $15, okay? But looking at $15 for one session and $29 for the entire month, obviously $29, if you're looking for a deal, that's obviously the better deal. And for that, you get access online to a 2-hour session where each session essentially is a master class in how to make deals.
Yeah, and the one thing I really like about it is that somebody's bringing, hey, this is what I got. I'd like to, borrow money. I'd like to, put money to work, whatever it is, you're bringing it to the call, but you're essentially walking through people through the solution, and people are learning, oh my gosh, I never thought about that. I can do that. And people are buying deals, selling deals live. So it's a phenomenal group. One thing that we talked about is that something that I've learned over the past, in my short experience, is that the majority of the really good groups and courses are 1,000, probably significantly less courses. I know Andy's has a course on the financial calculator. When's his next class? Do you know?
Offhand, I don't remember, but it should be coming up soon. So there's actually 2 classes. The basic class covers the financial calculator on the first day. That's usually a Saturday and a Sunday. The second day covers mobile homes. And in that mobile home, it's how to find mobile homes, how to do the rehab, and then how to sell the mobile home as well. And in the selling portion, he covers how to go and sell it for maximum profit, which is on a note.
Right.
Okay, but again, as we talked about earlier, what do you do with this note as you're getting monthly payments? And it's great to have the monthly payments, but how do you go back and do your next deal? Okay, and so exactly these kind of discussions, and you're there with a group who's learning at the same time. They may be doing self-capitalization, self-funding of deals, and they want to learn how to make more money, or they want to go into mobile homes because, like in Southern California area, what's the average price of an entry-level home? Almost $500,000.
Wow.
So now it's getting to the point where mobile homes are becoming more and more mainstream. And so that's an easier entry point for families to move into, or for retirement purposes. You want to preserve your retirement funds? Move into a mobile home, pay as little as possible, and then use your retirement funds for the rest of your life.
Wow. That's crazy. I didn't even think about that. $500,000 for a mobile home in California. And we're actually in the Dallas-Fort Worth market, me and Joe. And that market, mobile homes would, land entry level, we're looking at, 250,000. So about half. So I guess that's one of the reasons we're seeing a lot of people coming into Texas. But that's what we focus on. We focus on affordable housing. So I know we're about to grab lunch. I don't want to take any more of, both your guys' time. I don't know if there's some last minute things that you guys would like to share, maybe some takeaways. One thing that I'd like to ask somebody with so much experience, such as you've attended some of the big names, right? Peter Fortunato, the, Andy Tisley, the, Bill Cook. I don't know. We can probably go on and on. Why does somebody like you that has so much experience still come to these type of events? And any takeaways?
So Andy likes to point out that Peter Fortunato has been investing for many decades already. And Peter will try and have a course that he attends every month. And if basically the most creative genius in the real estate market finds time and makes effort to attend so much real estate education, where does that put the rest of us? Wow. Okay. And so Here we're at an event that teaches private lending, and I've been doing private lending for over 5 years. And today we just covered one portion of doing wrap loans. Okay. And I've been doing wraps for probably at least the past 2 years. I try and specialize in exactly that. Yet I'm able to go ahead and take some nuances or refinements that I can apply back into my practice. Um, so there's always value in that. And one change alone can protect lenders or borrowers or both. And so that's what I try to do. I'll always trying to find better ways of doing what I'm doing.
Wow, that's a huge takeaway. I never thought about it. If one of the most savvy, most experienced, most creative, best in the business, Peter Fortunato, attends every single month. And I know people sometimes are like, I don't know if I want to go to 2 or 3 events a year, and he's going to an event every month, or tries, for the past 3, 4, 5 decades. That's impressive. Any takeaways, Joe?
My reason for attending events like this is exactly what Goodwin said. You're going to have some key takeaways from it. The networking is very important. And for all those out there who already attend 2 or 3 investing events per year, you need to realize that this community is very tight-knit. A lot of people know each other. If you're a borrower, you need to treat your lender really, really well. If you're a lender, you need to make things easy for the borrowers to do the work that needs to be done. You don't get in their way while protecting your investment. It's a double-edged sword. That's my main takeaway from this week.
Awesome. Well, appreciate everybody. I know we're getting ready to wrap it up. I mean, I know for me, the one thing that I know about events, and something that I always teach and tell people, is these type of events are life-changing, and you never know, as Jim Rohn would say, the great Jim Rohn, you never know which event is going to be that life-changing event. You never know which event is going to unlock the vault. You may have every digit and you may need the last one. And this event, the next event, may have that last number that you need to unlock the vault. It might be a relationship. It might be an idea. It might be a concept. So I highly encourage for every single person to be able to attend these events, whether it's in person, online. There's just so many resources. I definitely appreciate, Goodwin being able to sit down with us. And I know that we're going to be collaborating and creating lifelong friendships and relationships. And I think that's what it's all about. So appreciate it.
Something I've learned in life, the more you learn, the more you bump up against things you don't know.
Yep, that's wisdom. Appreciate you.